Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about coronary artery disease, or CAD. This is another heavy hitter in the world of cardiovascular disorders. This one is a big deal because it's the leading cause of death worldwide. But don't worry, at the end of this session, you're going to understand what it is, how it works, and how to manage and prevent it. I'm going to help you get there. And of course, throughout this lecture, I'm going to go ahead and give you tips on how to ace those NCLEX questions. You ready? Let's get started. First things first, what is CAD? It's a condition where your coronary arteries, the arteries of your heart, which supply oxygen-rich blood to the heart, get narrowed or blocked by plaque buildup. This process is called atherosclerosis. Say that 10 times fast. Over time, the plaque hardens or ruptures, leading to a reduced or completely blocked blood flow to your heart muscle. Think of your coronary arteries like the fuel lines to your car. If they get clogged or cut off, your car is not going to be able to run or operate efficiently. Just like your heart, it won't get oxygen or nutrients that it needs to keep running. And when your heart isn't happy, your body isn't either. Now, what leads to plaque buildup? Here are the main culprits. High cholesterol, especially LDL, your bad cholesterol. Think of LDL as the sticky junk that clogs your arteries. Smoking, not only bad for your lungs, it damages your blood vessels, but it also increases the stickiness. It has a direct effect on our platelets, making the clots more likely. Now, with smoking, the clots are more likely, but with the next two, hypertension and diabetes, they affect the vessel walls. They actually damage the walls, and this gives areas for those plaques to build up. We're going to talk about those two in a little more detail in just a second. The final one, a sedentary lifestyle and obesity. Sitting too much, it doesn't just hurt your back. It's bad for your heart, all right? You really got to be up and active. So here's a fun fact. Your family tree matters. A family history of CAD can put your patient at risk. You need that genetic background, and you need to educate your patients. So here's some more detail on hypertension and diabetes, as they are major culprits to our artery damage. So let's really break it down, and I really want you to focus. This is a lot of detail. Hypertension, high blood pressure. High blood pressure creates consistent forces against our artery walls, causing micro tears in the lining. These tears act like Velcro, allowing fats, cholesterol, and other debris to stick and to form those plaques. Over time, the arteries lose their elasticity and become stiff, atherosclerosis, making it harder for the blood flow to go smooth. And turbulent blood flow, as we learned in AFib, can cause clots. Diabetes, or high blood sugar. Elevated glucose levels damage the endothelium, the inner lining of our blood vessels, by triggering inflammation. Now, once we've triggered the inflammation, this leads to increased permeability, allowing harmful substances like LDL to penetrate our vessel walls. Diabetes also contributes to glycation, where sugar molecules bind to proteins, weakening our vessel structures and promoting plaque formation. Remember, this is all about promoting that formation. High blood sugar reduces our nitric oxide production. And this is a different process because nitric oxide is responsible for vessel relaxation. So if you don't have it, you have an increase in narrowing. So not only are we making plaques with diabetes, but we're also reducing the total volume that is allowed to go through our arteries. Two problems in one. Wow, that was a lot of information. Let's take a second. We're going to work on a question. So, take a breath for me. Let's go. Which pathophysiological process leads to the development of coronary artery disease? Here's our options. A, inflammation of the pericardium. B, deposition of plaque within the arterial walls. 3, or C, dysfunction of the SA node causing arrhythmias. And 4, or D, proliferation of myocardial cells. Pause the video if you need a second. All right, Correct answer in 3, 2, 1. Deposition of plaque within the arterial walls, or B would be the correct answer. Here's the rationale. CAD develops when plaque, composed of lipids, cholesterol, and other substances, accumulate within the walls of our coronary arteries, causing atherosclerosis. This leads to narrowed or blocked arteries, or just reduced blood flow to the heart muscles. That's all it takes, is a reduction in that flow to damage our vital organs, specifically our heart. So now let's talk about symptoms. CAD, or coronary artery disease, shows up in two big ways. The first one, angina pectoris. This is chest pain caused by a reduction in flow to your heart muscles. Think of it like the heart saying, "Hey, I'm not getting enough oxygen." So there's two types of this angina. Stable angina happens when activity or stress and goes away with rest or nitroglycerin, a treatment. Unstable angina is a red flag. It happens even at rest and doesn't improve with nitroglycerin. This is a warning sign of a possible heart attack. Pro tip: on the NCLEX, watch for terms like predictable or relieved by rest to identify the stable angina patients versus worsening or at rest for the unstable angina. The other way that CAD shows up is myocardial infarction, or MI. That's the big one. It's a heart attack. Classic symptoms: crushing chest pain, pain radiated to the jaw or the left arm, nausea, shortness of breath, sweating. All signs your heart's not getting what it needs. Atypical symptoms are also important to pay attention to. Women have fatigue, indigestion, upper back pain, or just feel off. Your older adults, dizziness, shortness of breath, fatigue, or confusion. Pay attention to that confusion. Your heart's not getting what it needs, so your body is not getting the blood flow, and it's not getting the blood flow, your brain is not being perfused. Diabetics, they may have silent MIs, experiencing little to no pain. This is because of the nerve damage or neuropathy that they experience because of high blood sugars. So here's your NCLEX connection. Pay attention for scenarios where symptoms seem vague, non-cardiac. They could still point to an MI. Wow, we did a lot there. Let's just take a quick breath. We're going to try some questions to see how we do with that information. A nurse is caring for a patient with unstable angina. Which of the following findings would support this diagnosis? A. Chest pain occurring at rest. B. Relief of chest pain with nitroglycerin. C. Pain described as crushing or radiating to the jaw. D. ST segment elevation on an ECG. Or E. Nausea and sweating during the episode. Now, I'll give you a little hint. This is the select all that apply if you read the question. All right, correct answer in 3, 2, 1. 1, 3, and 5 would be the correct answers in this case. Here's the rationale. Unstable angina is characterized by chest pain that occurs at rest and may not be responsive to nitroglycerin. Symptoms such as crushing chest pain, radiating to the jaw, nausea, diaphoresis, sweating, also occur. ST segment elevation is typically seen with myocardial infarction, not with unstable angina. Managing CAD is all about improving your blood flow and reducing the heart's workload. Let me repeat that. Managing our CAD is about improving blood flow and reducing the heart's workflow. Let's talk about the medications and how they actually work. Nitroglycerin to start. This drug relaxes smooth muscle in our blood vessels, causing vasodilation, increasing the size. By opening up the coronary arteries, it improves the oxygen delivery to the heart muscles and reduces the chest pain. It also lowers the preload, the amount of blood returning to the heart, reducing the workload. So a twofold effect. Antiplatelet agents. Drugs like aspirin and clopidogrel prevent platelets from clumping together, reducing the risk of clot formation on plaques. They're especially crucial after a stent is placed or a heart attack. Another option is statins. These block the enzyme HMG-CoA reductase in the liver, lowering LDL. As we mentioned before, that's our bad cholesterol levels. They also stabilize the existing plaques and prevent rupture, a major cause of heart attacks. We have other options like beta blockers. These reduce the heart rate and contractility, lowering the myocardial oxygen demand. Less work, less oxygen needed. For example, metoprolol helps prevent chest pain by keeping the heart calm and steady. And a steady heart means steady oxygen need and steady drive. Another option, ACE inhibitors. By blocking the formation of angiotensin II, ACE inhibitors lower blood pressure and decrease afterload. All right, pause for a second. Nitroglycerin decreases preload. ACE inhibitors decrease afterload, making it easier for the heart to pump or push the blood out. They help remodel the heart after an MI and prevent heart failure. Wow, that was a lot. Go back and repeat that section if you feel like you were overwhelmed. There's some really good information in there. Now we get into the excitement of CAD. Are patients having a heart attack? What are you going to do? How do you remember what to do when everything is going crazy? So in emergency care for an MI, it often starts with acronyms, and there's going to be two we're going to discuss here. The first one, MONA, M-O-N-A. But let's break that down into some details. Morphine, all right? MONA, morphine is number one. Relieves chest pain and anxiety. This reduces the heart's oxygen demand. Oxygen. The heart needs oxygen. Increase the oxygen availability to the ischemic heart tissue. Nitroglycerin, we just talked about that. It's a vasodilation, improves the blood flow to the heart. And aspirin, an antiplatelet, prevents further clot formation by inhibiting platelet aggregation. So let's talk about acronym number 2. This one's a little longer. Thrombin S2. This is another way to remember what to do in the event of an MI. Thiopyridines, or clopidogrel, is T. H stands for heparin, an anticoagulant to prevent new clots. Renin, angiotensin, aldosterone inhibitors. Whoa, that's a lot. But that stands for ACE inhibitors. We talked about those already. Oxygen, morphine, beta blockers. All right, remember MONA. You can see MONA kind of throughout this process. Interventions, such as PICC or angioplasty in certain cases. Nitroglycerin, statins, or aspirin. Again, you can see the MONA acronym inside of this one, but this one's just a little bit more detailed. Here's a pro tip. On the NCLEX, know the order of interventions. While MONA helps you remember, always remember this: your priority is usually oxygen, aspirin, and a 12-lead EKG. All right? This confirms your diagnosis. You really got to be on that. CAD is more than just a heart problem. It's a systemic issue with widespread consequences. So let's explore those really quickly. We are going to start with the heart. Chronic CAD can lead to heart failure due to the heart working overtime against the reduced blood flow. It's like running a marathon every day without any breaks or any relaxation. Now, your brain. Plaque buildup in the carotid arteries increases your risk of strokes. Now, going to the kidneys. Reduced cardiac output limits the blood flow to your kidneys. Your body needs that oxygen-rich blood. This leads to chronic kidney disease. And your quality of life is decreased. Untreated CAD limits your activity, causes frequent hospitalizations, and reduces the lifespan of your patients. Here's the big picture. As nurses, you're not just managing symptoms. You're not just managing a disease. You're preventing a life-altering complication and even saving lives in the discussions with your patients. Whoa, let's take a breath. That was a big topic. Great job getting through it with me. So go ahead, complete your exercises for this topic. Guess what? I'm going to see you in our next video.